So I'm going to talk a little bit about AmeriCorps. I am currently an AmeriCorps member with Book Harvest. So I work a little bit with our book access team mostly. And I can share my screen. I'll show you, I'll do a little bit of a presentation about AmeriCorps, kind of introducing you to what AmeriCorps is. A lot of you might already know, but then also how to build an organizational partnership with AmeriCorps if you're looking to have AmeriCorps members for yourself. So let me go ahead and do that. And I will do a slideshow. All right. So, and I put my email on this first page. So feel free if you have any questions or you feel like you want any answers from me, you can reach out to me and I can answer whatever questions I have. I'll also provide you with notes on what I'm talking about if you feel like you want some more information or more in-depth information about the stuff that we're going to be covering, because I'm going to be covering it kind of quick. So as I said, I'm an AmeriCorps member with Book Harvest. I'm also part of NC Literacy, NC Leader Corps. And so I work with all of the other cohorts here in North Carolina to kind of spread information about AmeriCorps and what we do. And so as a little bit of an overview, AmeriCorps is a federally funded program, and it gives Americans a way to serve their community, or individuals a way to serve their community. And their highlight is to address critical community needs such as education, food security, economic opportunity, disaster services, health, environmental stewardship, and service to veterans. Most of you are likely going to fall under education or economic opportunity in terms of book provision. That's what I fall under as well. And so it's kind of just like this overarching federal program that looks to provide volunteers or interns to organizations. And the types of people who are usually going into AmeriCorps are usually college graduates, recent graduates looking for more experience. That is the bulk of the people who are going into AmeriCorps. And so they're usually pretty skilled. And your organization can actually kind of tailor what your needs are for who you're looking for and what you need out of a member. So you can kind of require, for example, a bachelor's degree or some kind of certificate or an associate's degree based on whatever your programming needs. But we have people who are doing career changes. They're graduating from either an undergraduate or a graduate degree. Some people are looking for a career transition, and some people are doing AmeriCorps seniors, and they're just looking for something to do after they've finished their prior career. So you've got a large range of experience going into it, and they really are going to be able to help you in certain capacity building ways within your organization. So the biggest portion of this is going to be about like becoming a partner and what those steps look like. And so the first step really is to just get in touch with your local AmeriCorps State Commission, because they're going to have all of the resources you need based on whatever state you're in. They're going to know what programs are running and where you're running from, and kind of be able to align you with who is going to work best with you. So for example, I work for NC Literacy Corps, and even though it's based in Durham, North Carolina, through Duke University, we actually have members who are in Cary, Raleigh, Asheville, Charlotte. They're all over North Carolina, and that is just the way that this specific program is able to run statewide. Some of those might be national programs, and some of them might be regional programs. So it might be that you're in the Southwest or the Northeast or something like that. And there will be regional offices or state offices that can help you match with your program what will work best. And AmeriCorps is funded mostly by grants. And so this is kind of when you're looking for becoming a partner with AmeriCorps. even though they're applying for grants every 3 years, typically, you can usually become a partner every year once that cycle comes around. Most AmeriCorps members are starting around September or October. They're looking to have applicants coming in between like June or July through August to get those people placed with their organization. And before that, you're going to work a couple months to kind of get your service description up to date, to make sure that everything is clear for what your AmeriCorps member that you're wanting to take on is going to do. And so that is going to be the bulk of what's going on when you're getting in touch with your AmeriCorps State Commission. And once you actually get in touch and they're actually considering you, there are going to be some qualifications that they're going to be looking for. And most organizations will already have these qualifications in place. So they're usually looking for proof that you have workers' compensation and liability. They want to make sure that you actually have a plan for what your AmeriCorps member is going to do, as well as a supervisor. So someone who will be able to actually make sure that projects are being delivered at, in a timely fashion, weekly, probably. And then that supervisor who can also sign off on time cards. And that needs to be either a consistent person, or if they leave the organization, someone needs to be able to immediately take that over. Because they will be working with those AmeriCorps programs to make sure everything is moving smoothly and that members are getting projects. And so if the organization wants to apply to be a site, they have to kind of just be a match with all of those, as well as sign a memorandum of understanding that basically says that you have read all of these agreements and you agree to be able to do all of this. And so that's kind of like the administrative portion of it. There is no fee to apply to become a host site for an AmeriCorps member, but there are kind of like back fees. The way our program works is that our organizations are required to pay the full stipend for the AmeriCorps member. They usually work about 11 months or 1,700 hours. And then the program actually reimburses a portion of that. For Book Harvest specifically, the living stipend is somewhere around $28,000, and then we're reimbursed at 68%. So, and that is just what our program is able to provide. Actually, that is the cap of what is allowed in North Carolina. Some programs will offer lower than that in terms of how much your AmeriCorps member needs to be paid. And it's kind of like an internship. It's not the payment for the AmeriCorps member is pretty low, but that's kind of the deal that's made when you're going into it. And like I said, in terms of timeline, you have usually around 1,700 hours. Some AmeriCorps members, if you're working like education-based, will work in education school like year. So it might be August to May or something like that, or August to June. And that'll be their timeline that they're running on. So once you actually become a host site, there are like certain expectations that you will kind of need to meet, or your site will need to meet. And it says like prohibited activities for AmeriCorps members, and that mostly means what your site and what they're allowed to do. And when you need to keep in mind what you're allowed to do. So they're not, for example, allowed to do anything that would influence legislation. They're not allowed to register people to vote. They're not allowed to be part of, I think, like a religious affiliation. They're allowed to do that outside of work, but like when they're in their AmeriCorps gear, that's some of the things they're not allowed to do, as well as they're not allowed to like take donations and help with funding. That has to be entirely separate from the AmeriCorps member themselves. So those are some of the things to keep in mind when like inquiring about an AmeriCorps member. In terms of matching organizations with programs and service members, you are still interviewing these AmeriCorps members and they still need to be a match with your program. So you are still going to be screening out or kind of looking for who is going to work best with your organization, what experience they have, and if their skills are best suited for you. So if you don't, if you're trying to interview AmeriCorps members and you aren't finding people that are meeting your expectations or aren't actually meeting your needs, they'll look for other people. And it's not just like you're being matched with a random individual, you're actually going through and being a part of that interviewing process and that hosting process. So that's a big portion of it. Another thing is like reasons that may deter AmeriCorps from taking you on. And some of those are, and this is probably not the case for most of your organizations, but being fully remote is not something that AmeriCorps can take on because they're very specific about needing to be hands-on in the office. And they're pretty strict about being on site. Another thing is that they really need to, like I said before, prove that they have a plan for who is going to come on, because they need to prove that they actually are able to have the capacity to take on a full person. So if most of their staff is half-time, then they probably won't be able to take on a full-time member. So they have to be able to prove that they have the workload and that it's not going to, and this is a big deal, like replace someone else's job that you might actually vet for your own organization in general. So they're not there to replace the work that you have, but instead to be an asset to your organization. And like I said, do capacity building projects. So I will talk a little bit now about what AmeriCorps members do. For those of you who might be kind of wondering what is in the scope of possibility. And basically all of the work that AmeriCorps members do is broken down into 4 categories. So systems development, volunteer engagement, resource stakeholder development, and sustaining and growing programs. So all of the work that AmeriCorps members do should fall under those categories in some capacity. So whether that means developing communication or sending out newsletters to volunteers to try and recruit and engage more volunteers, or maybe that means for your organizations figuring out new sorting systems or new inventory systems to try and grow your organization, even though they're only intended necessarily to be there for a short period of time. So the big focus is going to be on how can they be there to help your organization do something that they wouldn't have been able to do before. So that might mean going to events that you wouldn't normally be able to go to, or that might mean working on surveys that kind of engage the community with the work that you're doing and seeing what the feedback is. So all of those are all of the work that they're looking to fall under. I think that is kind of like the bulk of what we're gonna, what they'll be doing. In terms of like back to programming, what that kind of looks like, because most of the organizations are book provision organizations, they're going to be looking mostly for outreach type of programming. Some literacy programming will look to actually doing book provision work, but it's really good to, like I said, look within your and ask your state commission to see what kind of work they're doing. to confirm what will be the best match for your organization. And for us, a lot of that, we were allowed to work with a literacy organization because a lot of the work we do with growing programming, like with book babies and stuff, has been with under that umbrella of advancing literacy. And I think that is the bulk of the information. It's a lot of information, but I wanted to leave some time too for like questions, and if there was anything else that needed to be clarified or expanded on, because it's a lot of information. So if there's anything, feel free. I also added again my email and Rachel's email. So if there needed to be, if you had any questions, you can feel free to reach out to either of us. Rachel has been part of the recruitment process for taking me on here at Book Harvest, and can kind of provide more administrative and organizational background on what all of that looks like, if you'd like it. But yeah.
I'm happy. Parker, thank you so much for sort of getting all of this information together and presenting it. It is a lot. And it sounds complicated. We have had a great, it has just been a really great partnership for Book Harvest to have different AmeriCorps members come to our organization. They have really added capacity. And what also has happened is we have ended up hiring them as full-time staff once their commitment of service has been over. So we've done that with 3 staff members, and Parker is one of them. So I really, Parker had, I think one of the wonderful things about working with AmeriCorps members is you do get to interview them and select which AmeriCorps member would fit best with your organization. And also, we've just really had wonderful experiences with working with people that have a really just able to dive into our organization, just, you know, meeting that steep learning curve and adding a lot of capacity, like Parker said, being able to go to more events, being able to implement processes and systems that we don't always have the time to do, but to have someone to be able to look at something and really think carefully and thoughtfully about how we could make it better. Parker has done that. So it has just been a great experience for us, and our partnership has been through Duke, like Parker said, which has worked out well, but I know that there's different partnerships that could exist throughout the country. So if this is something that you're interested in, please check it out. Parker, one of the things that someone asked is, can you expand on the fee for housing?
Yeah, so most programs, AmeriCorps is the one who covers housing fees. That's usually not covered. So basically, AmeriCorps programs either allow you to provide a living wage, or they provide you with a flat fee and then help with housing assistance. But the program that you talk with will be very clear about what their expectations are. And usually state and national programs don't require you to provide like housing and those other kinds of fees. Those are usually like VISTA programs, which are like AmeriCorps grant funding type of positions. And so those look a little different. But like I said, so here in North Carolina, the cap is $28,000 for an AmeriCorps member, and that is just paid directly to them. And so sometimes if you're what will happen is, for example, you could have an AmeriCorps member, if they're paid lower, so like $16,000, $20,000, and then you as an organization pay like $300 or some level of their rent. But usually, like I said, that's a VISTA program rather than a national or state program.
And I think another question that came up was, when do you think it's better to utilize AmeriCorps versus hiring staff? One thing about the AmeriCorps position is it's an 11-month position. So if you're thinking of doing something that is going to be more long-term, and you train this person who's with you for 11 months, even though, you know, they might be really great and helpful, but then they're moving on, then you're having to train somebody else. And I don't know why it has worked with us that we've been able to hire some of our AmeriCorps members. It just, I feel like we've gotten lucky in that way, but that's not always the case. Sometimes an AmeriCorps member knows that they're just doing this for 11 months and then they're applying to graduate school or something else. So I think that's one thing to definitely keep in mind is, do you want to have to retrain someone 11 months later? And then Melissa also put some information in the chat about Melissa's experience with AmeriCorps a year or so ago. So that's also helpful too.
Is there anybody else who is on this who has used AmeriCorps and can talk a little bit about your experience? Eric, do you want to jump on?
Hi, I'm Eric Law from Promising Pages in Charlotte. We are also participating in the NC Literacy Corps program through Duke University, and we're happy to have Sierra Wilkins as our first AmeriCorps member. And I've worked with AmeriCorps programs in the past with other organizations, and I will say that Duke does, Kathy Sykes at Duke does a wonderful job administering this statewide program. It's really wonderful to work with. And one thing you do have to realize with any AmeriCorps program is that whether it's Duke University or some other entity administering the program, they have to rely on this federal AmeriCorps funding. And there's a sub-granting process that takes place. So we work with Kathy at Duke, and Kathy has to apply for funding every year. And sometimes the timing can be a little challenging as to when the funding is going to take place, when, how much money Kathy is going to be able to get for the program, and as a result, how many members she's going to have to distribute to partner organizations across the state. So while 11 months is the norm in our case, we weren't able to get Sierra until January, so she's only going to be with us for 8 months. And it's still quite worth it. As I said, I've worked with AmeriCorps members at another organization, and it's really good for capacity building. It's good from my perspective to have an outside set of eyes see your program for the first time and provide really valuable feedback on how we can make our programs better. And one of the things Sierra is going to be working on over the course of her service is helping us reach out to teachers and other partner representatives to help follow up on the impact that our book provisioning is having on students. That's something we've been struggling with, quite frankly, for several years, and we're making progress, and Sierra is going to help advance that process. But I think it's well worth it. I do think it's important to make a clear distinction, and one thing that Kathy has done is to provide a clearly defined set of instructions saying that AmeriCorps members are not employees. You really have to make that clear distinction between your staff and your AmeriCorps members. So it's important to have that distinction in mind as we move forward. But all in all, it's a wonderful program, and we're thrilled to have Sierra on board for these last 2 months and look forward to the next 6.
That's fantastic. Has anybody else used AmeriCorps or have any other questions?
So.
I think that it was a little hard to hear. I'm not sure for anybody else, but it's a little garbled.
Sorry.
While they work through, does anybody else have, we have a bad webcam.
Is that any better? Yes, much better. Thank you for the thumbs up, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I just wanted to say we at Dips for Kids had used AmeriCorps Vista members, not AmeriCorps, but AmeriCorps Vista for many years. I've probably had 20 come through through our organization and things like that. And I can speak very highly of it. Maybe some tips or tricks though. We did a lot of interviewing. That was a big thing for us, was making sure that we interviewed numerous times, like a tiered system. We probably interviewed each AmeriCorps Vista member at least 3 times before we would commit with them, making sure that they understood the assignment that we had for them here, as well as making sure that they were a good fit for us. It is a little bit of work, I would say, to do all of that, but in the end, it was so worth it. We had so many great young and old people come through our organization to work with. I loved the idea, Eric, when you said fresh eyes, that makes so much sense. It was so nice to have some of these people come in and be like, let's try this out, or let's try this. And it was just very nice to have all of those new minds working with us. And we had done everything from having just 1 or 2 AmeriCorps Vistas. We had 8 at one point in time. So we've really done a lot of work with them and we really loved it. So thank you, Parker, for your presentation. It was great. And if anybody is thinking about using the AmeriCorps or AmeriCorps Vista program, it is really an excellent, availability for all of us to be able to use. Thank you.